This is People I Know Show, a podcast about interesting people, personal growth, and being wrong. I'm your host, Curt Carstensen. Today on the podcast is Elles Houweling. This is episode 39, and Ellis is the Wandering Mermaid, at least as you would find her on her blog at thewanderingmermaid.net or on Instagram at _Wandering Mermaid. Ellis has parents that were born in different parts of the world and have left her to live in different places and learn many languages. And now, as she's into her adult years, has realized traveling for long amounts of time and going to places and just experience the world is something that's very important to her. And she's found a way to sustain it that has influenced my thinking of how I could fit this into my life, and perhaps with what you are doing and what you might want to be doing in terms of traveling, how perhaps you can do some things differently by learning from Ellis in this conversation, or perhaps reaching out to her later. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Ellis and I talk about a number of things, including how we sort of share a dream of removing the borders in the world. Ellis and I met at a hostel. We'll talk about that and many other things related to travel. And if you want to click over to the People I Know Show Instagram or Facebook pages, you'll see a photo of she and I at the Golden Gate Bridge on an evening last November. And I always check the show notes for all the links of all the things that I just talked about, as this is the first full video podcast episode, start to finish, something I'm trying this time. I won't do it every time in the near term, but perhaps longer term, that's the way to go. Something to see how people react. So if you like the full video version on YouTube, please comment there wherever you are able to reach me. And if you're listening on an app somewhere on the website, just know that you could watch this whole thing as well. Now, let's get into my conversation with Elles Houweling. Another new adventure of sorts with People I Know Show, as I'm doing a live video stream with Elles Houweling, currently located where in the world, Ellis?
In Fluently, in Austria.
Well, welcome. So as we record this, I'm 4 or 5 hours ahead of you, but I think we both have a little daylight outside, as I can see through your window shades there.
Yeah, it's still light outside. Crazy.
Ellis, we've met in person maybe 2 days of our lives, but in those 2 days, you've inspired me and influenced me in ways that I wanted to have you on my podcast. And if I can think back to those times, how exactly you've inspired and influenced me, we were both sitting in this hostel in San Francisco. It was maybe the 1st or 2nd or 3rd of November this past year. And I think we're both kind of just waiting around before this pub crawl. And I don't know if we both were definitely going to go, but we started talking and we both ended up going on this pub crawl. And then a couple days later, maybe the next day, a few friends and I had a couple extra seats in our vehicles. We were doing a 1-day trip to Napa Valley. And I thought, I need to invite someone that I met, a few people that I met, and you were one of 2 people that I met that previous night that I invited. And we went on a little day trip to Napa Valley. What do you remember from those days back in November?
A lot. And yeah, basically met a bunch of really awesome people. Obviously, you being one of them. By the way, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel really, really honored. So yeah, we went on this like really fun day trip, a wine tasting tour in the Napa Valley, and we just talked about everything, talked about life, and yeah, just one of those instances that made me realize that it doesn't really matter where you come from. Because I remember we were in the car with like 1 Australian guy, 3 Americans, and then me. We were from different parts of the world, obviously different backgrounds, different age groups, and we're all just hanging out as friends. And it really doesn't matter where you come from, who you are. If you just strip it down to the bare minimum, we're all just the same, and it's so easy to get along. So yeah, it was just like really good times.
How you've truly influenced me is, well, that day we took part in the same activity and kind of doing the same thing as you. You didn't know anyone really, and you're going off in this car ride for a couple hours to this different place. But I know just from getting to know you then that this is something, or something like that, you probably do it quite a bit, because how you've truly influenced my thinking is I kind of want to find a way to do more of what you do, which is work from wherever you need to work, but travel as often as possible, go to new places, go back to old places to see old friends, wherever in the world that you want to go and have been before to see people, or places you haven't been. You seem to be doing this as well as anyone that I've met. So I want you to share your story with me and for the people that listen to my podcast so that they know that it's not only is it possible, I think it's maybe not as hard. I'm sure there's some hard things about it, but it's not as hard as people would think to do what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I am insanely lucky that I get to do this, that I have the financial stability to do this. And I know that this is obviously not as easy for a lot of people, but I think a large part of it is also just a leap of faith. So I was in London, I finished my degree, I studied law, and then I started working in a law firm. And I had it all set up. I was gonna work or study for 2 more years, then do my training for 2 years, and then work in the law firm for a couple more years. And yeah, I was gonna become a corporate lawyer. And then I realized that I'd be stuck in London until I was 30. And that freaked me out. I was like, I'm too young. There's so many things I want to do. I need to get out of here. So I took my backpack and just went backpacking by myself in Asia and Australia and New Zealand for 6 months. And with every passing day, I fell in love more with that lifestyle, really started finding myself. So it wasn't long before I realized that the whole corporate law thing was just not going to be me. So I started finding other ways to live my life. I was pretty lucky that soon after I started traveling, I found this online job where I could work as a translator. So I worked a couple hours per day, enough to kind of make enough money for accommodation and food and my activities so that I could keep traveling for however long I wanted to. And yeah, I just realized that if you have the opportunity, the freedom to leave your old life behind, plus you find a way to find some financial stability. A lot of people that I meet, they work at the place where they're like currently residing at the moment. So they'll travel to a country, stay there for a couple of months, try to work in a bar or a hostel or a cafe or whatever. And then they keep traveling. Yeah, if you're able to kind of let go of your old life, of your community, of your society, there's definitely a way to do it. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I'm definitely not looking back to working in a big city or a corporate life anymore.
Maybe people have been doing this for a long time or forever, but I get the sense that especially like the Instagram age where you can really find a lot of people that are doing something similar to what you're doing, that more and more people are realizing, okay, I can find a way to do this. And because I think more and more jobs are mobile and online based, it is a reality that it can be done. And I suppose everyone just needs to find their niche of how can I earn enough income to sustain this. And
Yeah.
you've been able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Just whatever it is, it's exactly like you said, a lot of jobs are now online. For a lot of jobs, you don't have to go into your office on a daily basis. So for me, it was translating. I was lucky with my languages. You can write. If you're good with digital stuff, you can do digital marketing, design websites, code. I have no idea. There are so many jobs out there that you can do. And I guess in a way, it provides the best for both worlds, because these companies that hire me, they don't have to pay for any extra expenses. I don't get pension from them. I don't get health insurance or anything, which is fine because it gives me the flexibility that I don't have. I get to work from wherever, whenever. So you kind of find a balance. I guess companies are saving on employees and I don't have to be anywhere.
If I were to take some sort of leap similar to what you're doing, my two main concerns would be, like, first off, I need to find a way to make an income while not being anywhere near where I'm at now, and really not ever being in the same place necessarily. But also the health insurance here in the United States. Health insurance, healthcare is a big deal, and it's really hard to come across affordable health care if you're not getting it through your workplace. Some people are able to do it in certain ways, but that would be for me a big challenge. Plus, a focus of my life has been not only to do everything I want to do now, but also saving money, investing in my future. So at some point I don't have to do anything, or maybe at some point I can leave whatever behind to whoever I want to leave something behind to. Are you able, so with the health insurance, how healthcare, how does that work for you where you're from? And then are you still able to save for whatever else you want to do years from now?
I am self-employed, so I pay for my health insurance as a private business owner. And I have recently started to not backtrack, that's the wrong way of putting it, but slowing it down in terms of traveling a little bit, because I am also aware that on the long term, for me personally, this is not sustainable either. As much as I love it and as much as I will keep traveling, there will be more times in between where I'm setting up my business and just trying to pave more of a stable path for my future. So it's all about what anyone wants to do themselves, I think. And every passing day, with every person that I meet, with every journey that I go on, it's more about finding who I really am and what I really want. And it's just about finding this balance between owning an own business here in Europe and having the ambition of making that bigger, enlarging that, but also my travel side, something that I've always had and I would never give up, like that wanderlust of always wanting to go somewhere. And I have recently come to terms that my life means that I will have to find a balance between that. So I'm now spending some time in Europe, working here. Then as soon as the summer season, the tourist season here is over, I will be going to Asia for 2.5 months. And then I'll be back here again to work the winter season. And then it goes on. So ultimately the goal would be to work and expand my business for 8 months out of the year. And the rest, the other 4, I get to travel. And that seems like a fairly sustainable way for me to do it. And yeah, that's kind of the goal right now.
And you mentioned that you're doing the translating online, but you do have another business I don't think you've alluded to, if you're willing to share, that is a seasonal business at home. So explain how that's been able to work for you.
Yes, so this is more recent. I only took over our family business a year and a half ago, which is a small hotel in a ski resort in Austria. So our winter seasons are quite busy. So I have to be here to work from mid-December until the end of March. But the rest of the year is quite chill. Right now it's summer. We still get people in here and there, but it's not so busy. So I employ people. I've got 2 employees that work for me, which gives me enough time to kind of venture out and do my own thing. It's all very recent, and I'm trying to find a way to make this as flexible as possible, but still sustainable. But yeah, I do have my own business here at home, so it makes it all a lot easier for me. And like I said before, I'm financially quite lucky that I got this handed to me. So I have a lot of options and flexibility in my life.
With all this, I imagine, as it is for me, as I live my day-to-day life, if not daily, every week or so, a few times a week, I think long-term, how can I get the life that I want and do everything that I want to do and just slowly work towards that? So I'd imagine that's something that you're always thinking about too. Am I spending enough time doing the things that I want? But what it seems to the people that are able to achieve what you are achieving, that you are constantly making the progress, where I fear some people get caught in a situation where they don't know how to do anything different. And I think as long as you're pursuing and making progress towards whatever your goal is, I think that leads to a pretty good quality of life. And I just want anyone that doesn't feel like they're doing what they want to create some thoughts and ideas so they can get closer to that. So how does that play out in your mind?
I would not phrase it like that. I see what you mean, and I completely agree, but I should stop myself from constantly thinking about what is that life that I want. And that's something I've done my entire life. I've always been just a little too ambitious, and that's not healthy. So yeah, of course I want to expand. I have this dream about like owning another hotel somewhere in Europe 10, 20 years down the line. But what I've learned, and something that I want to remind everyone of, is that you only get today. Tomorrow is uncertain. Yesterday is already gone. So today is what you got, and that's what you have to be happy with. Because you can make plans and you can have dreams, and by all means you should. But if people think that once you've achieved this one thing, once you have, you know, that one penthouse and maybe that car that you've always wanted and that dream job and your next promotion, confetti will just come falling from the sky and you'll eternally be happy and that's just going to be it. That's not how life works. Happiness is not a constant. Happiness is a state of mind, and it's something that you have to keep reminding yourself of, that what you have is enough. Like, you should strive for a better life, and of course you should have goals and dreams, but like, still remind yourself, I need to remind myself on a daily basis that what I have is amazing and that I'm so happy and lucky all the time without always wanting more, if that makes any sense.
It totally makes sense to me, and I think that's a piece of this conversation that's going to be maybe powerful to some people to hear, because I think far too often our minds are stuck in the past or the future and not enough time in the present. So it sounds like that's an area that you are focused on in the present then, whether it's today or tomorrow or any day that you can talk about that's been recent or even right now. How is it that you are so focused on today? What does a day look like for you to make sure that you're accomplishing that and not concerning yourself with some time down the road and really getting your mind far away from the moment? How does your thought process go?
Well, I do concern myself, obviously, with what's going on in the future. Like, obviously, I can't plan. I try not to plan 10 or 20 years down the line. That just seems impossible for me, because really, you're one decision away from a completely different life, and you never know when that's going to hit you. But yeah, of course, I do want to make sure that I have food tomorrow, and I do want to make sure I have a roof over my head tomorrow. So it's tiny little things like that. But other than that, it's more just, it's good to have things to look forward to all the time. That's what keeps us going. But I don't want to live a life where I only have to look forward to something in the future. Whether, you know, when you're working a 9 to 5, whether you're looking forward to your lunch break or looking forward to the weekend or looking forward to your next vacation, cool, that's awesome. But if what you're doing right now is not making you happy, then you're doing something wrong. So for me, like, sure, I get up and there'll be days where I'm in a shitty mood, but then I'll look outside. I'm looking at a beautiful sunset over the mountains right now, right here from out of my window. So yeah, if I'm having a shitty mood, I will be like, why am I feeling like this right now? Is this rational? No, it's not. Okay, so what is causing this? How are we going to solve it? So maybe sometimes you just need a nap. Maybe sometimes you just need to, like, calm down, have a glass of wine. I don't know. And when I'm not feeling it, I'm trying to catch myself in the moment, realizing that the reason why I'm feeling sad or down or whatever is not actually making any sense. And then I try to not be like that anymore, which is easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm constantly happy and whatever, but no, I try to be mindful and grateful about everything that I have, everything that I get every second. And then beyond that, yeah, I plan my life in a certain way. I do have things to look forward to, holidays that are coming up, meetups with friends that I'm going to have. I'm traveling again to meet up with friends from all around the world, and that's just amazing that I get to do that.
When we met in person some months ago, I remember you telling me the story of your background and upbringing, and you can get into as much or as little as that as you want, but from my perspective, it is one of the more unique backgrounds I've ever come across of someone I've met. As you had influences, pretty powerful influences from different parts of the world that have led you to being this person you are to now, at least in some way. What of that are you willing to share?
It's a long story. I'm very happy to share. So I'm half Dutch, half Chinese. I was born in the Netherlands, but I moved to China when I was still a baby, where I was raised by my mom and my grandparents until I was 5 or 6 years old. Went to kindergarten there, and then moved back to the Netherlands until I was 12. Then my parents and I moved to Austria. And then when I was 18, I moved to London for university. So yeah, all along the road, I've always been just a little too foreign for everywhere. And whenever I go to China, even now, I'm always the white kid. And then in Europe, in the Netherlands, although people never treated me like, oh yeah, she's completely Asian, there's so many cultural influences in my life, in me, that make me maybe a little more Chinese than European even, or definitely a good 50-50. Then as a teenager, I moved to Austria, and like at that age, 12, 14, life is already difficult and you're trying to figure out who you are. And everybody that I met was just like, oh yeah, but you're foreign, like you're just different. And at age 13 or so, you don't want to be different, you want to fit in. So I spent like a good 5 to 7 years trying to figure out how to fit in. How could I make myself more Austrian? How could I make myself more Dutch, more Chinese? Till I realized it's never going to happen. Then I moved to London. My university was super international. My course is super international. And for the first time in my life, being international was a good thing. And people are just like, oh, that is so interesting. I want to hear more about it. So I started embracing that. And yeah, the more I travel, the more I get around, the more I'm just like, international is exactly who I am. Like, I genuinely don't feel like I have just one home anymore, or not even just a couple. Wherever, and it sounds insanely cheesy, but wherever I have friends is home to me. So whenever I go to the States, yeah, I got so many people to hang out with, and like, this feels like home. Yeah, in so many different countries. And honestly, I'm really happy that I'm like this now, because I see the world in a different light. Again, sounds really cheesy, but I don't really see borders anymore. So it doesn't matter for me where you come from or whatever your background is. If you're cool and we can get along, we're cool. And everything else is just made up social construct.
And you have friends probably in as many places of the world as anyone that I know. What's maybe some of the more unusual or unlikely places that you would say that you have friends? And are there a couple places in the world that you just don't know anybody, that you're seeking to go find a way to have a reason to go there and know somebody?
Everywhere. Honestly, if I could, I'd want to have at least one friend in every country, because it would just really prove my point that we're all really connected and it isn't that hard. Language obviously makes a big difference. So any country where a person speaks my language, it makes it easier for me to have friends there. I don't know if there's any places that are particularly unusual. They aren't for me. Yeah, no. I guess, yeah, I've recently been to the rainforest in Uganda, and like we had a tour guide and we were touring through the rainforest. And I kind of just became friends with our tour guide and be like, this is fascinating. Like, you're a villager from like Western Uganda, but you speak English, and we're just chilling over here and getting to know each other. And it's that easy. Yeah, so I have friends there, friends obviously in Asia and in South America, like literally, honestly, on every continent. And it's pretty amazing. Like, close friends, people that know me really well, and that, yeah, in a way are like family to me.
It was your relatively recent trip through different parts of Africa that I think inspired me to finally ask you to be on my podcast. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think of that trip, and I've not been to Africa yet. That is somewhere I totally intend on going. And the way that you approached it seems to be, okay, I want to do it kind of like what it seemed like you did, because I think there's a lot of different ways to visit places in Africa. I don't think most people comprehend how huge it is and how many countries there are. And if you're going to take a trip to Africa, like, how do you, if you've never been to any of the countries, how do you even decide like where to go? And it kind of is overwhelming, actually. But I'd like to describe your trip, how long you were in Africa, how many countries you saw, and we can get to your blog in a little bit. I did read the blog post about it. It seemed like coming together with this, like, you didn't just like sign up on some travel agency and do whatever they did. No, you created everything for yourself, and it's pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, I was actually only there for a month and 1 week, which I know for most people isn't only. But usually when I travel longer. I travel longer than that. But I guess I was in Kenya and then in Uganda. Well, if you're a first-time traveler, first-time backpacker, or first-time solo traveler, I would probably not recommend Africa. As much as I love it, and anyone I would recommend going there, Africa is not necessarily the easiest continent to travel by yourself. I mean, I think a lot of people might disagree with me, but that's how I felt. I feel like Asia, especially Southeast Asia, is really, you meet a lot of other backpackers, and there's such a travel community there already that is, if you don't know what you're doing, you just go there, you buy your ticket, you book your first hostel, and things will just fall into place from there. Meeting other travelers in East Africa, at least, was a little harder, but that made it so much more exciting for me. So I started in Nairobi. It is really overwhelming. I kind of guess I always wanted to go to Kenya, but never really made that decision until I had a friend that I met in Japan, who is a journalist from Spain, who was put in Kenya in Nairobi to work there. So for like a year or so, I was like, okay, the next time I find the time, I'm going to come and visit you. I've always wanted to come to Kenya. I guess now I have a proper reason. But she left the country 3 days before I arrived.
Oh, no.
So I never got to meet up with her. She had to go back to Spain for work. But it was still one of the best experiences ever. And obviously I had a great time. So I kind of had my ticket. I ended up in Nairobi, and I was like, not quite sure what I want to do. Like, I got a month to spend here in Kenya. We'll kind of see what happens. Then on my first day, I met these two American girls who had been traveling with each other for a while, and they were staying in my hostel. And we just got along really well instantly. So we went on safari together in the Masai Mara. And then after 3 or 4 days together, I was just like, I really like you girls. Like, I was supposed to go back and then south to Tanzania. But I was like, I kind of want to keep hanging out with you. And they were like, yeah, you should come with us to Uganda. So I was at the border between Kenya and Uganda, and I was supposed to go back east. But, you know, me being me, I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go to Uganda. So that's how I ended up going to Uganda. We traveled through Uganda together for 2 weeks, went to the rainforest, went trekking with gorillas, which was an amazing experience. And then slowly made my way back to Kenya. They left and went back home. And I ended up doing the east coast of Kenya by myself. Then instantly met a bunch of other really amazing people in Mombasa, where I spent like a week. But then on like 2 days before I was supposed to leave, I met this girl who was a local, and we just got along so well. And she was like, it sucks that you're leaving in 2 days. Like, we're just getting to know each other. I kind of want to keep hanging out. And I was like, yeah, it does. But I already have my flight back, and I can't change it because it's really expensive. And this is a really long story. I'm not going to go into it. But we met someone else, another friend of a friend of hers. And for whatever reason, he thought I was worth buying a new ticket for. So he bought me a new ticket back to Europe a week later. So I'd be like, I got no excuses anymore now. I guess I'm staying a week longer. So yeah, the craziest things happen to me when I just travel by myself. It's all about having an open mind. I don't plan much when I travel. I usually, when I have the opportunity, I just buy my flight in and then play it by ear once I get there. Because, yeah, if you just let yourself meet all the people and, like, keep an open mind, it's insane. Or it's, like, so fascinating where life can take you at times. Like, just let the universe do its thing, basically.
And I think it just does do its thing. And it's just us talking a little bit the first night we met, leading to me thinking, yeah, she'd be a cool person to have on this trip. And she's probably someone that's willing to do this. As we went to Napa Valley then, and just how that leads to then us having this conversation now, and whoever ends up listening to this and who it might inspire, or people have just never considered that any of these things are possible, or they wouldn't know where to begin. Just knowing that you exist, and you are certainly as friendly and welcoming as anyone I've met in my travels, where I'm sure if someone went to your Instagram and reached out and had questions or read your blog, you'd be as willing as, I guess I shouldn't speak for you, but to help, to like, you want to share this lifestyle. I sense that you want to share this, what you've learned, with as many people as possible. So the world is there for anyone. And you are just one of my now friends in a different part of the world, and also resources when I try to do more, that I trust that you'll be there for me. And I'd imagine you've got that in all directions, people coming to ask you, you asking other people. And it's the way the system works. But to be a part of this system in some way, and to know that I can do whatever it is because Ellis has done it before, or she knows somebody, or I know somebody else, it's all there. And I want this message and the conversation with you to influence and inspire people that have just never thought about it or didn't think that they could do it? Because it's probably doable in some way to some degree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, obviously. Anyone, you, anybody else, like, ask me anytime. And that's what I'm here for. I'm so passionate about spreading this message because it's really who I am. And traveling is such a community. We're such a community. We help each other out. And like, I meet people who have experienced things and the most amazing stories. And it just, yeah, it's all about coming together. And I guess one of the reasons why I really encourage anyone to travel as much as they can, because it really makes the world a really small place. And I always think that's a good thing. Like, we're always so afraid of what we don't know. Well, go out and reach out and try to get to know. And once you know all these different cultures and people and whatever, it's not that scary anymore.
Totally not scary. Is there, and this may be difficult for you, and I'm sure it would be, because when people ask me similar questions, it is difficult, but can you pick a moment or one of the moments, but speak of a moment within all of your travels that when you think of just powerful experiences, like maybe just moments in time that you absolutely will never forget, that jump to the front of your mind when I bring this up, what can you share that would, if only this experience, if it's the only experience you ever had, it makes traveling worthwhile?
Oh yeah, no, I've that is really hard. I have had so many amazing experiences. Oh, you really got me on this one. I really don't know. I'm trying to like go through.
Maybe the first one that really struck you in a way, or in the early days.
I tell you, in the early days, something that really started changing my path. So yeah, I was back at home in China after graduation, and I had a plane ticket to Korea, spent a couple of days in Korea, and then I went to Japan to hang out with some friends. And then I was making my way down to Australia, but I had some time in between. So I went from, like, I basically just went online and checked what was the cheapest flight out of Japan further south on my way to Australia. So I ended up in Thailand, and I was really sad because I have amazing friends in Japan, and like, I was supposed to stay there only for 1 week in Tokyo. I ended up staying 3 on my friend's floor, basically. We just had the best time ever, and it really became home for me. So I always had the travel blues. Now I've realized when I leave a place where I've met friends, and the first couple of days are always hard, but I know I'll meet new people and it will just continue again. But that was my first time that I had to deal with the goodbye, and I was not doing well. So I got to Thailand. I was just like, you know what? Maybe it's a good thing. I'll just have a chill week, and then I'll go to Australia where I have family. It'll be all right. On my first night, I remember really well, I was in the hostel, and there were these two people from Jersey, the Channel Islands, so British Jersey. And they had a pack of cards, and they were just like, oh yeah, does anybody want to join in a game of cards? And I was like, sure, I'm here by myself. I ain't got no one to hang out with. Cool, let's start playing cards. And they were like well-seasoned backpackers, really go with the flow kind of people. At that stage in my life, I was still like, okay, I'm going to travel for a couple of months, I'm going to go back to London, go back to law school, and you know, my life is going to be all structured, and that's who I am. And they just started teaching me, like, don't plan your life so much, just buy a flight out and meet the people, just kind of like hippies, go with the flow kind of lifestyle. And yeah, I'm still thinking of, I haven't met them since. We hung out for a week together. We got along really well. We did our diving license together. So for like a week, we were the best of friends. I haven't seen them since, and this has been more than 2 years, but I do still frequently think of them and be like, you really did change my life in that sense, because I started being more open-minded towards traveling, towards backpacking, and yeah, it's just been the best thing ever. And I think now when people who are new to traveling meet me, I hope I have a similar kind of influence on them. Be like, don't plan too much. Life will somehow always find its way.
How many total years would you consider yourself to have been a traveler in the way that you are now?
How many years? Not just one. I was 1.5.
Has it been that recent? How old are you?
24.
Oh, really? So you graduated just a year and a half ago.
It's 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is a newer thing, but it seems to be a part of your lifestyle moving forward. And I like the way you describe that. I don't like to plan, but I feel like I have to. And I guess I have a structured enough lifestyle back home that I can't be gone that long. So I'm working towards finding a way to not have so much structure back home so that I can go longer and not have to plan everything the way that I do, because the way that you describe it seems more like me. Because, and I want to talk about hostels here and some of the experiences, because it's when I met you in San Francisco, I was traveling with two friends and I could have stayed. I could have just stayed in a hotel type of situation, but I knew specifically that I hadn't stayed in a hostel for a while. And even though I wouldn't want to live over a hostel all year long, I do on occasion. I feel like it's such a great place. Let's get the energy, put myself out there, be ready for whatever comes. And, you are among a few people that I still am in contact with, and some really good friends just in one hostel situation in one city for a few days. But this can happen anywhere and always. And I have good friends elsewhere from other hostels, as I'm sure you have many of them. When you're approaching your hostels, how do you pick the one that you end up staying at, and then from the moment you get in there, what's your approach to putting yourself in situations that seem to allow for these great stories and great experiences?
It's really not hard. Especially if you're in a good, busier hostel. And I guess it's just always a hit or miss. I try to go by not how great the reviews are, but how many reviews there are. So I go on Hostel World to pick all my hostels, and you'll have a few that have like 90 reviews and then a few that have like over 3,000 reviews. I can tell that the one over 3,000 probably has more guests. Mm-hmm. So I have a tendency of going to those. I like busier hostels because just more chances to meet people. I always travel by myself for most of the time, but I don't like being by myself. So after a day or two of not having spoken to anyone, I am really eager to talk to someone. So I'll just hang out in the common area or whatever, and yeah, everyone is just kind of there. And there's societal rules are different in hostels. Like on the street of London, you would not be caught dead talking to a stranger. Like even staring into a stranger's eye into their eyes in the tube is like a no-go. But in a hostel, you can walk up to anyone and be like, hey, yo, I'm by myself. Can we hang out? And then by the end of the night, you're the best of friends. Rules are just different there. And I love that. You can just talk to anyone. So yeah, I remember in the beginning, I was shy. I was like, I don't know them. What should I say? What should my opening line be? And like, it doesn't matter. Like people are really, really chill in places like that. So yeah, it's really easy.
My first hostel experience was in Chicago a few years ago. And in that case, it was 4 of us, 3 or 4. It's a 4-bedroom. And I guess not everyone hearing our conversation has necessarily stayed in a hostel or even understands a hostel. So I suppose we can back up a tad just to kind of give the layout. Often, like, you can probably pay less money and stay in a room that has more beds. Usually, the struggle is I still want to get a reasonably good night's sleep. So the more people in a room in the beds, it just leads to more possible noise. So I think like a 4-bed room is good, and you maybe meet those people. But if they're not there, or maybe you're not getting the vibe that you think that they're the type of people you'll really lead a good connection with, yeah, you can just wander around, go to the common area, and there's going to be other people either in groups already that are welcoming, or people like you and I on that evening in San Francisco. We're just sitting by ourselves near each other, and then the conversation begins, and then someone else joins in, and we're both very welcoming. And then a whole new group of welcoming people has started with me and you, even though we didn't know each other minutes before.
Yeah, people often don't know that because you're just talking and it seems like you go way back. Then new people join and they're like, oh yeah, so how long have you guys known each other? We're like, for about 32 minutes. And that happens all the time, and it's just the best because sometimes you get tired of that. What's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? What's your travel story? It gets old. Once you get past that, you'll meet people with whom you have nothing else to discuss. And that's fine as well. But very often, once you get past all the basics, you get to talk about life and who you are, and you get to learn so many things, and like people with different life stories that you otherwise would have never met in your life. And that's when you get to the interesting parts. Yeah, so always be welcoming. I always try to be welcoming when I'm hanging out in a hostel, whether I'm with a friend or not. And when I'm not, when I'm having a moment with just my friend and we don't want anyone else to be there, we make sure we're not in a common area so that we don't have to give up that vibe. But otherwise, anyone, always join me and we can talk about anything you want to talk about.
And you mentioned being on the tube in London and how it's like the total opposite thing. And I believe that to be true. And you maybe stick to however you handle that and not change anything. But I think from my hostel experiences, I'm able to take some parts of that and move it outside of the hostel to the real world and interact with people differently based on some of the skills. And there really are life skills that you can learn in these situations that you then can apply to different people in different places. And I think it just becomes easier to meet and get to know and strike a conversation with random people with all the practice that you're able to get in that type of a setting.
Yeah, I do have to say that that's easier in the States than it is in Europe.
Okay.
Like, generally, American people are so much nicer. But yeah, I do try to do that here as well. And like, in a way, it's about confidence, I guess, that you gain. So what I told you when I first started doing this, first started the whole hostel life, I was nervous. I'd be like sitting there with my beer, and like for 20 minutes, I would try to scout out who I would talk to and then contemplate what my first line would be. And then with time, it just becomes so much easier. You get more confident talking to a stranger, and you realize that, yeah, they're all just people as well. And the ball is in their court, I've realized. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to make conversation. If you're down, then I guess I'll get that vibe from you. And if I talk to a stranger here on the street and they're like, what is she doing? Why is she talking to me? Well, that's your problem, not mine. Clearly, you're not in a mood for conversation, but that's cool as well. So once you've got that certain level of confidence of talking to strangers, just becomes easier anywhere in life.
You had mentioned that after a day or so, if you haven't really struck something like this, I don't know what word you use, but you're really seeking it out after a short time. I had the curiosity, do you ever feel lonely or isolated when you're traveling far, far away from your home or homes? And I guess you haven't made these connections? Because I feel like that's a possibility for me. The further away I go from home, if I don't feel like I have the connection that I want or some sort of connection, I think I can get pretty lonely.
Absolutely. And I've had that countless of times, but I'd also argue that that's a good thing. I think we all need to learn how to be okay with ourselves and our own thoughts over a longer span of time. And I had to learn that because I don't like being alone. And I've had like times where I was spent almost an entire week basically not talking to anyone. So I had to keep myself entertained, and I really had to come to terms with my own thought. And it was terrifying at the beginning. But the more you do that, the more you're just like, yeah, this is who I am. It gives you time to think about things that you want to think about, but also inevitably about things you don't want to think about, but you just have to because it's only you. And that's a valuable life experience. So now I'm honestly pretty cool with just being by myself over a longer span of time. I prefer not to, but if I have to, it doesn't terrify me as much anymore. And I do think that's something that everyone could use in their life, because one way or another, we need to figure out who we are ourselves apart from our family, our friends, our loved ones, society in general.
Yeah, and I think to figure out who we are and then to be that person we are, not try to be some other version of ourselves in order to create something. I think people can do that with some success for a while, but then they'll run into a wall where it doesn't fulfill them, because I believe we all need to understand ourselves and just present ourselves the only way we truly can, honestly, and then see what that attracts in the world. And for some people, it probably attracts a lot, and some people maybe not as much. But whatever you do attract, I think will be way more powerful and valuable than the things you might attract if you're trying to present yourself in some way that really isn't you.
Yeah, and also just don't think that's sustainable. I feel like a lot of people are just a reflection of what society thinks they should be. or what their family or what their friends or everything. And I'm sure everyone around me has my best interest at heart, but still they don't know me. And I don't know myself until I remove myself from that and ask myself, what is it that you really want? And once I figured that out, I just realized that that whole corporate thing wasn't me. It's just TV and my mom and all my friends in university and just the city of London telling me that that is what you should want, that is what you should strive for. But then I'm like, no, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. So being by yourself is really valuable, and really trying to find out what it is that you want, like listening to your inner voice.
Slightly off topic briefly, but I'd thought about it. How many languages do you speak fluently, and how many can you kind of pass with when you're traveling in a different place where you don't actually speak the language, but have learned to know enough?
I'm conversational in 7. I'm fluent in 4, 4.5, 5. I get by well in Spanish. Like, I haven't had any issues really with that. I get by well in Portuguese. I pretend I get by well in Japanese, but actually it's really not that great. But yeah, that's it. I don't speak anything else.
And how did you come about learning any of those languages, or maybe what? Because I only know English. I learn some Spanish and I forget some Spanish, and I try to learn more, and I haven't been able to build up that ability to really soak it in or prioritize it. How have you been able to add the languages that you've added throughout your lifetime?
By not having a choice. You get the choice of switching back to English. If you're in a tiny village somewhere in Bolivia, you don't get the choice to switch back to English. So you use the Spanish that you know, you try to acquire more, because otherwise life is just not going to happen. And that's honestly my only tip that I can give anyone if they want to learn a foreign language properly. And I know it's easier said than done, but yeah, try to go to the place and really immerse yourself in the culture. I went to South America for 3 months. I volunteered in Bolivia. And yeah, I was in a small town. People there don't really speak English. And I was put in front, even on my first day, I didn't speak any Spanish at all. I was put in front of a group of like 15 kids and teenagers, and they were like, go teach them music. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that. But I wasn't given a choice. So after the first 2 weeks were absolute hell. Google Translate, everything. Then you keep using the same words over and over again. And then, yeah, somewhere along the line, I was just like, I guess I'm conversational in Spanish now. I studied French, so that was easier. I did live in Paris as well for a year, and I did all my courses in French. And then I started learning Portuguese on my own. I'm like spending half of my time a summer in Portugal. So the more time I spend there, the more I use it, the easier it gets. And the first 4, I was kind of born and I grew up with them. So I was just insanely lucky, honestly.
That is really cool. And I think that would be the trick for me. I don't really do anything, like I don't make huge gains unless it's urgent. And I think if I was in a place where I had to know more Spanish or whatever language to have a better lifestyle for the however many days I was there, that would probably be the thing that inspired me to learn more Spanish. So that is an excellent tip. Ellis, let's now move into the personal growth segment of the podcast. And there's plenty of ways that you can take this, or whatever it is that you feel like you want to share. But what are you really working on? What have you learned recently? What have you learned at some point in your life that you feel is most valuable? Some of the more valuable life lessons for you that you're willing to share with me and my audience today?
Yeah, really good question. We've touched on most of these things already. It's a combination of a bunch of things that we already talked about. First and foremost, most importantly, be who you want to be. That's one thing that I had to learn. Like I told you, traveling, for the first time in my life, got the chance to just really listen to myself. With every passing day, with every person that I met in a hostel, whatever, every time I got to introduce myself, I was a blank page. They didn't know anything about me at all. And I could fill that however way I wanted. So if I wanted to, I could have lied about it, which obviously I didn't. But I present myself in the way that I wanted to present myself. unlike when you're hanging out with old friends who already know you really well. You might have evolved over the years that they've known you, but they already have an image of you. And you kind of get stuck somewhere in between who you think you want to become and who everybody else sees you as. Whereas when you're by yourself, you're meeting new people, you're nobody until you present yourself a certain way. So I started really changing through meeting new people, becoming the person I wanted to become, and ultimately really became a really different person. And yeah, that made me a lot happier. So personal growth, just listen to your own guts. And beyond that, it's just about balance. So I talk a lot about not planning my life, just kind of going with the wind. But frankly, that's not how society works. And I don't want to come across as a person who only lives in the moment and doesn't have anything figured out for tomorrow. Like, I actually do have some things planned. I feel like I have to. I do maybe one day want to have a family, and I feel like I have that responsibility towards maybe potential future children or whatever. So it's not completely just go with the flow, feather in the wind, but it's about balance. I refuse to go back to the whole planned out 9-to-5 corporate life. I want to keep traveling, but I also want to make sure that I have at least the next couple of years secured if no other force majeure would take me out. So yeah, I have to find a balance between those two things and stay happy within that. So having all of that combined, I try to make my life the best it is. And honestly, I really don't have much to complain about.
I'll propose one other topic then as a part of this segment. As I mentioned briefly before, I've read your blog, and your blog is fairly new, and I don't know exactly how that fits into your plans. I kind of equate it to this podcast. When you feel like you want to create something and share something, but then it's going to take more time away from other things, and trying to balance all of that. And for me, there's like a billion travel blogs out there, and there's so many people that either are or trying to be like travel influencers on Instagram. Like, this exists in so many ways. You, though, did move forward and creating a blog, having a few entries so far, and put that out to the world. What does that mean to you? Why are you doing it? Will it be a big part of your life in the short term? And just kind of walk me through your thought process on that.
You really caught me on this one. I don't really know yet. This is more of I guess I'll just wing it project. No, ever since I started traveling and backpacking by myself, a lot of my friends have told me, you should really start a blog. Like, I'd love to read more about your stories. And it's like, yeah, I really should. And then I never did, until I started trying to get more into writing. I'm doing an online degree in journalism right now, and I try to fit that into my freelance remote work because I love that, and I'm more interested in that than I am in translating. So I found this opportunity online where I could work for a travel company, but one of the requirements is that I had to have my own blog. So I was like, okay, well, this is the perfect incentive for me to finally do what I've been saying for a year now. So I just started it, like you said, recently. Yes, there are a million travel blogs out there. I have no idea how I'm going to make mine stand out yet. I don't necessarily want to become a travel influencer or anything. There is some kind of insincerity almost around a lot of the travel blogs that I see, a lot of the Instagram travel influencers, and I'm such a hypocrite. I do only post the nice pictures, and I sometimes try to be mindful of that, but first of all, traveling isn't always just pretty and easy and whatever. Like, obviously I've had tough times, and my life isn't always just rainbows and butterflies. That's what I post online, but obviously I get tough times as well. So no, I don't want to give you lies about all of this. I think I'm going to try to make it more personal. I'm not quite sure how I want to do this yet, so this is definitely still a project in the working. But I'd love to start interviewing people from all around the world if I get a chance, and ask them about more mundane things. I want to break down this myth that a lot of people have about different cultures, that it's so fundamentally different, but still kind of display it as, a different country, different people. Try to write stories that find a nice balance between individually, we're all just human and we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy and have a family and have friends, but we come from such different cultures. So the food that we eat, the music that we listen to, the things that we do on a daily basis are so different. And yeah, I want to try to turn it more into a cultural thing that brings us together. Because I guess you've already noticed in everything that I've said, I just kind of want to make the world a smaller place. I want us all to realize that we're really not that different. And maybe that's because of my background, maybe because I grew up literally between two fundamentally different cultures, Dutch, like central or like very Western European culture, and my mom being super Chinese, traditionally Chinese. Yet somehow I exist and somehow we've all made it work. So if I can be the living proof of cultures being able to come together and the world just honestly not being that big and people not being that different, I kind of want to start writing that down. How I'm going to do that, I have absolutely no idea, but that's something I've been thinking about for a while.
My background is not similar to yours at all, I don't think, but I'm with you. I feel like if we can just remove one border at a time from the maps and the globes of the world, these man-made creations, human-made creations that have divided people in all these different ways, and just slowly undivide and let us all kind of meld together. I don't know that at this point in history it wouldn't work, clearly, because there's too many people with all these power that are trying to have power and control. But I think that there's possibly, I had this thought very recently that maybe our reality is like, it's not like a video game, or maybe in some way it is, that human beings have like solved the game of life when all of the borders fall away and we're all like, world hunger actually ends and world peace exists, that either we will get to that finish line, that end result of this video game, if it was, or we'll destroy it and it'll end before that. But it's one of those two ends eventually, unless the sun goes out before that happens or something else. But that's pretty much it's going to be, one of the two. Somehow, some way, more and more people get on board with removing the borders and just loving everybody, and then eventually maybe it somehow happens beyond our lifetime, I'm sure. Otherwise, I think there's too many people trying to go the other way, and I think we all need to join together to not let that happen.
I think it is. We're moving towards that direction, but every progress in history comes with backlash, and that's kind of what I guess we're seeing right now. I have this thought a lot. I don't know if you read a book on this, but I literally talked to someone else about this fairly recently, where someone had this theory that once will come a generation that's going to solve all these problems, and then time will just stop and like eternity will happen. I don't believe that. I'm still a really rational person. I kind of like to believe in science, but it's a really interesting concept. Just the fact that, yeah, it's a video game, and once we figure all of this out, it's game over and we win, or it's game over and we lose. I like that theory. I'm going to keep that one.
I don't know that I believe that, but if we were like, I never even played The Sims, but if we were The Sims, the Sims game would end when something happened, and the thing would happen when everyone's happy and joyous and there's no more fighting anywhere, and somehow knowledge and education is moved in a way where enough, like the percentage is high enough everywhere that there's no way it ever goes backwards and the game is over. And then, yeah, I don't know what happens. That maybe that is the end. I don't believe that, but the thought hit me like, I don't know what's behind this existence. If there was something behind it all, and I don't believe that there is, if there was, that's just as likely of a scenario as any of the ones that are so commonly believed by everybody else, because I don't think we know any of it. We're guessing. We're truly guessing. And in many cases, people are using bad evidence or great quasi marketing from centuries ago to believe what they believe. And no, we don't know any of this. We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, now we're getting to the good part. Now we're getting to what's the meaning of life. But I feel like we need a completely different podcast for that one.
Yeah, well, I think let's transition now to the final segment, which is my Being Wrong segment. I value each of my guests each week coming on here and opening up about something that as they look back on their lives, they can confidently and honestly say that I was wrong about that. My thinking has changed. My actions have drastically changed, and being able to share that with me and with my audience. So when I talk of being wrong, is there something big in your life that you're okay with saying now that you were wrong about, and might be powerful for others to hear?
Yeah, this has been a big part of my life, and this is a controversial one, and do not take me wrong when I say that, but it's about trusting people. We can't do anything in our lives by ourselves, and we really have to rely on people, loved ones, families, and everything. But I trust too easily, and there's been times in my life where I should not have done that. I trusted my family, and they had their own interests at heart instead of mine, and I got really hurt. So I guess what I've learned from that is it's okay to trust others, especially making decisions in your life that concern you. It's good to rely on others, ask them, ask for a second opinion, ask for a third opinion. But when it comes down to it, trust your own gut feeling, always. Even if it turns out to be wrong, at least you have got no one to blame but yourself. Because in this instance, I blame myself for having trusted someone that I should not have. But it kind of like left me with this lingering feeling of anger, and I don't want that, because I'd be like, I should have made that decision myself, and if I screwed up, it would have been just me, and now somebody else screwed me over, and that's harder to deal with. So yeah, things that I've been wrong about, trusting the wrong people. So I have to rely more on my own gut instinct, I think. And I feel like a lot of people might disagree with me on this one and just say that I'm really selfish or something like that. Maybe I am. Maybe I just haven't figured out the right path yet.
So you're saying you're wrong on trust, where for a point in your life you learned to not trust anybody, and now you're more open to trusting, but you're still take a cautious approach to it. Do I got that right, or am I not quite on target?
Something like that, or more in the sense that I let other people make decisions about my life, my business, like, to be precise, that I should have made myself. And I kind of regret having listened to them, because now I can't. Yeah, I was just like, I wish it would have been my decision. Then at least all the blame would have just been on me, and it would have been easier to deal with. So I'll still trust people. I don't think I could ever take that away from who I am, but I still will always end up following my own gut feeling. So if something in my life tells me this is wrong, you should not go with that, I'm hoping that I will be smart and mature enough to be like, thank you for your advice. I appreciate that a lot. However, I'm still going to go with what I feel is right. You are welcome to tell me I told you so somewhere down the line, but I feel like I need to do this for myself.
So it's about trust, and it's about not living somebody else's life and doing the things that they think that you should do.
Yeah, something like that.
Sure you do your own. Okay.
Exactly.
As we wind down the conversation here, some people have watched this whole video, and there's other people that would have listened to the audio podcast. I can speak to those that are listening and haven't been watching. The sun has fully set where you're at in Austria.
It's really dark here now.
Before we wrap this up, Ellis, what areas online that are you willing to share that I can put in the show notes, but also here for those watching and listening at this moment, so that they can follow you or reach out to you at some point with any of their travel related or whatever questions, I suppose, or thoughts came to the mind while hearing you talk?
Whatever you prefer. I have Facebook, I have Instagram, so please do tag me in these two. And yeah, honestly, if anyone has any questions or wants to come visit me in Austria or whatever, like, by all means, like, let me know. I'm pretty chill about these things, so yeah, we're cool.
I've been in Austria. I did not get into the ski resorts area of Austria when I was there, so I think whenever I go back, if you're there doing your thing, you'll be the reason that I get back there first.
Yeah, deal.
Thank you, Ellis. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for checking out People I Know Show. Links are in the show notes for the People I Know Show Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube accounts. Find videos and photos related to each and every episode on the Facebook and Instagram accounts, as well as some video on some of the episodes so far on the YouTube channel. And this was the first full video episode on YouTube, and something I'll look to do more frequently in the future when possible. And also, if you want to learn more about Ellis or reach out to her, as she mentioned, Instagram is one of the ways to do that. _Wandering Mermaid on Instagram. thewanderingmermaid.net is how you can find her on her blog, and links are available for that as well. And if you can, please comment, share, talk about it, tell people, tell me what you think of the podcast People I Know show. Looking to learn what I'm doing well and what I can do better in the future. And I think a lot of people do like the video content, or I'm going with that angle so far, and we'll try to do more video in the future as different ways connect with me, and also to see the people I'm talking to, see who they are and what they're all about, and have the conversation in full video, I think is something that people can enjoy. And also, if you want to reach out to me in another way, you can always shoot me an email. Send it to Curt Carstensen using the email address peopleiknowshow@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in.